And I just want to close with one case example of someone who was suffering an addiction in areas of kedusha. It came to see me 30 or 35 years ago. And at the time, I was under the impression that therapy could help with addictions. And I learned the hard way that therapy is not very effective. Traditional therapy is not very helpful. And even though we identified his original childhood traumas, this younger man who was addicted, who wanted to overcome his addiction because it was bothering him, he felt very guilty about it. He was actually a very prominent mechanech. And the hypocrisy of his addiction and his role in Jewish life was eating him away, and he couldn't reconcile it. And that's why he came for therapy. And although we trace back his difficult childhood and stresses with his father growing up, it still was not enough to help him overcome his addiction. And at the end of some time working with him, and we saw we weren't getting anywhere with it because he was always having relapses and he couldn't seem to control himself. We had to both admit that he wasn't making much progress. And I told him at that time that the only thing I thought that would help him is if he attended a 12-step program. Now at that time, Rabbosai, they didn't have Guard Your Eyes, and they didn't have any frum venues for 12-step programs. And the only 12-step programs for addicts of any kind were held in non-Jewish houses of worship. And here was a well-respected mechanech who was well-known, who just felt, how could he walk into a non-Jewish house of worship to attend these programs, even though it was to benefit him and he needed it for refuah. So he felt that it would be usher for him to go into a house of worship, even if he's not going to the sanctuary, he's only going into the basement or the rec hall or whatever it was. So I said, well, so if you think it's a problem, ask a shayla. He said, I can't ask a shayla. I'm too well known. I said, so call up anonymously. Well, this younger man had spoken publicly in various venues in Yonei Chinuch, and he felt any gadol that he would consult might recognize his voice. And he couldn't ask anybody. He said, okay, I know I have to ask a shayla, but I want you to ask the shayla for me. So I said, okay, I'll ask the shayla for you. Who do you want me to ask? He said, I know you're close with the Novominsker Rebbe. Ask the Novominsker Rebbe for me. And if he says that I have a heta to go, that I have no choice, I'll go. Okay, I'll ask him. So I went to the Novominsker Rebbe and I presented the shayla. And I thought it would be a simple shayla for the Rebbe to answer. And he said, Meir, give me 3 days. Get back to me in 3 days. I thought it was going to take the Novominsker Rebbe 3 days to answer this shayla. It's such a difficult shayla. He's answering shaylas from around the world for much more serious cases, I thought, than this. I was shocked that it was going to take him 3 days. I said, okay. 3 days later, I got back to him, and I asked him, what was the psak? He said, I want you to know, tell your patient, Meir, that it's certainly mutter for him to go. If he has this problem, and it's the only way he's going to be able to overcome it is to attend a 12-step program, even if it's in a non-Jewish house of worship, it's definitely mutter for him to go. He said, I want you to know, I felt it was mutter for him to go when you first asked me the shayla. The reason I asked you to wait for 3 days, because I wanted to look into it more thoroughly, to see if maybe it would even be a mitzvah for him to go. And I decided after 3 days that it's not only mutter for him to go, it's a mitzvah for him to go. I said, what's the mitzvah? I thought he was going to say, Barapa Yerape, he has to help himself. He said, it's a kiddush Hashem. Let the goyim see that a yid is so racked with guilt and so upset about something that maybe to the goyim is considered a natural thing to do and a normal thing to do, and okay. But a yid knows it's usher, and that's why he's coming to the 12-step program to try to release himself from this addiction. I said, okay, I was very impressed with the psak of the Rebbe, and I couldn't wait. I called the younger man. I didn't want to wait for our next session. I said, I got the answer from the Rebbe, and I don't want to wait till the next session. And this is the psak. Well, he called up the next day, and he canceled the session, next session with me. And I didn't hear from him. He said, he'll get back to me. He didn't get back to me. So I called him and asked him, what's doing? I haven't heard from you in a while. He said, okay, I was avoiding, I'm going to come in and I'll tell you. I made an appointment, he came in, I said, why didn't you cancel the appointment? Why didn't you come in? What happened? He said, I was very depressed. I said, what was the depression? What was it about? What triggered it? He says, when you gave me the psak. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I was sure that it would be usher for me to go. And I was fighting it to go to this 12-step program. But when you told me the Novominsker Rebbe said that it's mutar for me to go and even a mitzvah, I realized I had no more excuses. Now I couldn't back out. Now I have to go. And it's either go to a 12-step program in a non-Jewish house of worship, or I'm going to have to finally get control of myself. And Rabbosai, that was the rock bottom for this young man, that he knew he has no choice anymore. He has to either face up to the music and go to the 12-step program in the non-Jewish house of worship, or he has to finally overcome his addiction, which Baruch Hashem, he did. So it's not easy, it's difficult, and I can certainly empathize with what both of the letter writers are going through. And I hope the VOD this evening has given you some greater insight in the challenges that your spouse faces and that you face. And I hope with the Abish's help that your spouses can gain control either by accessing one of the resources I mentioned, Guard Your Eyes, or Al-Anon for you, and you should have a Yeshua B'Karov.
Thank you for listening to the Guard Your Eyes Daily Chizuk broadcast. Pass them on to your friends and help spread Kedusha in the world.